everyone to our Elmira College Alumni Zoom. We're so excited to have you here tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sydney Stringham 19. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement, and I am here to welcome Dr. President Lindsay. President Lindsay.
Thanks, Sydney. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is the first in a series of online events that we're hosting that are designed to celebrate some of our many notable alumni and invite them to share their experience and expertise with us. Over the past 50 years, Elmira College has enjoyed a lot of success with its intercollegiate athletic programs, and particularly with hockey. First, with men's hockey, which started in 1972, and then women's hockey, which began in 2001. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Coach Barry Smith. Coach Smith served as EC men's hockey coach from 1975 to 81. His overall record during the time he was at Elmira was 129 wins, 50 losses, and 3 ties. Following his time at EC, Barry had a long and successful career with the NHL, with the Buffalo Sabres, Pittsburgh Penguins, Detroit Red Wings, Phoenix Coyotes, and Chicago Blackhawks, and is the recipient of 7 Stanley Cup rings. His international resume includes stints as head coach in the Swedish Elite League, assistant coach for Team USA at the 1991 and 2004 World Championships, and associate coach for Sweden at the 1996 World Cup and 1998 Winter Olympics. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Coach Smith, who is going to be sharing some ideas about some of his career experiences and thoughts on leadership. Coach?
Thank you, Dr. Lindsay, and thank you for the opportunity to participate with your webinar and with the Elmira College alumni, the faculty, and I think some students possibly. So it's my honor to have a chance to be here with you, and a little backstory I should share, and that is this past October, I came back to the Elmira College campus for the first time in quite a few years, and I came back to celebrate the Hall of Fame induction of the 1978 hockey team. And it was a great time to see the players that we had during that time period and meet some faculty members, as well as even the present coach at Elmira College, Aaron Saul, and some players. And during this time, I had a chance to talk to Dr. Lindsay, and I was quite impressed with the thought process of what they're going to do with the college and what they want to try to accomplish. So I volunteered to help out as best I could in any way possible to help the transition with Elmira College, and I'm still raising my hand to help out. So this is one opportunity, which is this Zoom call tonight, and for that I'm thankful again. But just to give you a little bit of a timeline, I came to Elmira College in 1975. Dr. Murray was the president at that time, and we had an athletic director. And also at that time, I came in quite unprepared. I came in from a prep school in Philadelphia. My younger brother, Dave Smith, was one of the captains of the team. I knew some of the players through him. So I came in to work with that particular team in 75, 76, and I wasn't ready. And our record showed it, and it was a very dismal year. And I sort of took it upon myself to say, that's not going to happen again. I've got to prepare myself. I've got to get better. I have to improve. And that particular year, that spring, went out and recruited 14 to 16 new freshmen. That summer, I had a chance to go to Russia through Concordia University in Quebec to study hockey at the Sport and Culture in Moscow, Russia. And at that time, the coach of the national team of Russia was Tarasov, Anatoly, and I took classes or courses with that particular coaching group and came back with a foundation of what we can do to be successful at Elmira College. And I've used that pretty much through my whole coaching career. And that was to be the most prepared team, Our off-ice conditioning was going to be superior to anybody else. And I always try to find new training methodology. So the 4 players that we brought in, the 14 or 16 freshmen, plus I had 3 main transitional players who I should mention because they were the leaders of that particular group and also transformed the team. That was Dave Smith, it was Ron Bispinoff and Pat Kennedy. And they were from the 75-76 team who came in and helped the freshmen that we had. And that from that particular time period, we took off. It was a great learning experience for me. It was fun to try different things with those players. Our off-ice training methodology, I mean, I feel bad for the guys, but we had to get up every morning at 6:30, train in the gym or else run, particularly wherever we ran around campus or down the hills. So we were really prepared and the guys bought into it, which was tremendous. And we were very successful. And from there, we added players on all the time, every single year. New players came in, they became leaders. Scott Brown, the Christina brothers, Kenny brothers, Dwyers. And it was a great learning experience for me. And with that, our coaching group or management group was very small. We had 2 managers or student managers, Mohammed and Sal. We had an assistant coach, Al McCormick, who came in from ECAC College, who helped tremendously. John Selzer was our guy who helped out with stats and all kinds of work that we had to do pre-scouting. And Bob Crandall, poor guy, he had to take care of all the players as well as basketball. So we were a small group, but very tight. And understanding to have a tight nucleus that's all on the same page also was the reason why we were successful at the pro level. So I left Elmira College in 81 and decided I want to learn something more about hockey. So I went to Sweden and had a chance to work with a team up in the northern part of Sweden, a town called Östersund. And I was there for 2 seasons, and my wife, Mary, and my son, Ryan, who was I think he was 3 years old at the time, made the move over to Sweden to have a new learning experience, and also to try to learn something more about European hockey. And from there, I stayed for 3 seasons in Sweden, 2 in the north, 1 in the south. Well, in Norway. So it was a 2-part coaching stint. I was going to coach a team called Oscar and then work with the Norwegian national team. And once again, I had to learn how to adapt or learn new culture. Language was different, different ownership, different management, different captains. So I had to be flexible in how you had to work with these different programs to try to find the best way to be successful. And in Norway, in my second year in February, I received a phone call from Scotty Bowman, and I'd met him in the previous summer talking about Swedish players. And Scotty called and said, we just let go Coach Jim Schoenfeld. I'm coaching now. Would you like to come over and be an assistant coach? So that started my career in the pros. I arrived in Buffalo late February. I remember the first game that we had to play was Philadelphia on the road, my first game. And Scotty asked me to do the pre-scout. I hadn't even met the team yet, so do the pre-scout before the game on Sunday against the Philadelphia Flyers. Well, I was quite nervous, obviously, hadn't met the players. I hadn't been around pro players much. And as I spoke in the pre-scout, some of the terminology I used was European. Defensemen in Europe were called backs, and we just say a center in North America, but they say center forward. So I said center forwards, whatever, and the players were laughing, wondering, who is this guy? What's going on here? But we went out and we played. So the first period, we scored first. So we're up 1-0, and all the players, they're quite superstitious hockey players, and they all turn around, they tap the same high fives for everybody that you normally do. Well, I was behind them, so obviously the guys, they tapped my hands and I tapped all theirs. Like, wow, this is great. We scored a second goal midway through the period. Everybody turns around, high fives again. And then just before the period is over, we scored again. So it was 3-1 us, and we high five. And I think this is the best thing since sliced bread. So we go off the ice, and in between periods, Scotty calls me into his in the room. He says, "Can I see you for a second?" I said, "Sure." I thought he might be happy with the pre-scout or how it's going. He goes, where have you coached before? I said, Coach, I've been with the colleges and over in Europe. He goes, if I see any more high fives or you acting like a cheerleader, I'll get you a dress and I'll give you pom-poms. And then that's the end of it. You either act like a coach, be a coach, or we're not going to be behind the bench. So I learned early on how to be a very stern coach and understand what my role was. So that was the start of that career. But in Buffalo, it was a good transition. We had a lot of young players on the team, Phil Housleys and Tuckers and Anderchucks and Creighton. So we had a lot of young guys that I could sort of intermingle with, and it was an easier transition. And then from Buffalo, I went to Pittsburgh with Bob Johnson. And Bob Johnson was a very famous college coach at Wisconsin, Badger Bob, and he had coached Calgary previously. And he came in, and he was the most optimistic coach I'd ever had a chance to work with. And everything was a beautiful day. He had practice skates, game skates. He had everything. So he was just couldn't be around the guys enough, couldn't give enough back to the players. And I learned how to be, how would I say, a great practice coach from Bob Johnson, because he just thought every practice was going to be a masterpiece. And he was a beautiful human being to work with. So that year, it was the first time for me to work with a superstar who was Mario Lemieux. Ability to see the game, their anticipation, their hockey sense, their hockey IQ was just, I've never seen anything like it. And we struggled a bit, just got into the playoffs, made a trade, and picked up Ronnie Francis, Alf Samuelson, and Grant Jennings, picked up 3 players. And all of a sudden, the playoffs, first year, we just caught on fire. We won the first series, we won the second series, won the third series, and now we're in the Stanley Cup finals. And for those who don't know, probably the most difficult trophy in all of sport to win is the Stanley Cup, because it's a long duration. You're playing a possibility of 4 times 7, 4 different playoff series, up to 7 games. So it could be 28 games, and you're playing within 2 months. So it's almost every other day. So having said that, it was a tremendous experience watching these players go through the grind of a Stanley Cup playoff. And it was an amazing grind. A backup goalie had to win 1 series. Players were hurt. Players were coming in and out. It was just a complete march. It was like a military march trying to get through. So the last game, we're playing in Minnesota, and we're up 6-0 after 2 periods. And Bob Johnson says to me, "What do we say?" I said, "Coach, I'm afraid to go in the room. I don't want to ruin this." He goes, "Well, we have to say something." I said, "I'm not going to go in. I feel that this is unbelievable. I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to ruin the effect." I said, so he went in and said, "Okay, boys, let's get him in the third." Out we went, won 8-0. It was the first Stanley Cup, and it was a tremendous experience going back to Pittsburgh, having parades and so forth. But having said that, going back to my first team that I really learned from, which was the 76 team that was inducted to the Hall of Fame, these players were very similar to what I had in Pittsburgh. They had great passion for the game. They had compete. They had hockey intelligence. Seen it at a lower level at Elmira College, and now I had seen it for the first time at the pro level of what it takes to win and how it feels to actually win. So that was a great first experience. We had a parade that summer in Pittsburgh, and then the second year we won the cup again. We had another really good team. In the third year, we probably had the best players overall, but we didn't win the cup that year. We lost to the Islanders, and there was a bit of a hiccup between the manager, the coaches, and also the hierarchy of the team. So I understood from that point on that if we're going to win, everybody has to be in step. Every part of the management team, the equipment managers, the medical, the guy who takes care of the off-ice training, the assistant coaches, the head coach, the general manager, assistant manager, everybody has to be in lockstep to have a chance to win, because we all have to have the same philosophy. We have to have the same positive influence. The team, any team that you have in a sport changes during the season. It's like an amoeba. It changes shape, it changes size, it changes because of intensity, and changes because of injuries. It changes because of trades. So having said that, you realize to be successful at any pro level in sport, you really have to be sure that you constantly stay on top of any problems you have, any player you may have that's stepping sideways or needs extra work, or an equipment manager that possibly has a situation, because every person who touches the players becomes very, very valuable. And Bob Johnson explained to me what his ring theory was, and I'll share it with you. And his ring theory was everything has a nucleus, and that nucleus is your inner circle. And that inner circle is the most important heart. That's the heart of your team. And in the inner circle, we have the ownership, we have the management, we have the coaches. And he says, then we have to branch out, because those who touch the players the most or are with them the most is going to be your equipment manager, it's going to be your medical, it's going to be those who are out constantly with the players. So we had to be sure they were inside the circle as well. And then you're going to have your leadership group. In Pittsburgh, we had Mario Lemieux, Ron Francis, I would say Rick Tocchet. When I went to Detroit thereafter, we had Steve Yzerman when we first came in as the young captain. And we had a very, very good offensive team in Detroit when we first arrived. It was, I think, 94, 95. We had a great offensive team, but what happened was we couldn't win in a playoff series because we couldn't play defense. So we lost the first year in the playoff series to San Jose, and we made some transitions, and the transitions were to try to bring in some players that would play on both sides of the puck, learn how to win 2-1, 1-0 if possible, and ask Steve Yzerman to change his game, which wasn't easy for a top goal scorer in the league and a point getter. And he made the transformation. We brought in some other players. We had the Russian Five at that time, which was Sergei Fedorov, it was Kozlov, it was Konstantinov. And with the Russian Five, we had a natural leader in Fetisov. And he had been a leader all the time for the Russian national team, so he was a strong leader. And we brought in some other players who became leaders as well to join the leadership group. And at that time, Nick Lidstrom was just becoming a superstar. And with that group, we just took off. We won 2 cups back to back. We were having fun doing it. The players were actually challenging me and the coaches to have more intense practices, try to have a higher skill level to try to show and make these guys improve. And everything became together. It became Hockey Town. It was a winning environment. We played the Colorado Avalanche every year, and whoever won that series in the playoffs was going to win the cup. I mean, that's how strong it was. So we had that group going on, and then in the 2002, we won again with a different coaching player group. We had the Chelios, we had Shanahan brought in, we had different players from the outside, Brett Hull, we had Robitaille, we had goaltending, we had Hasek, we had Cujo at one time. So we had a group of, I would say to you, 12 Hall of Famers, on the same team or the same era. And you have a chance to learn from all of them, how they prepare, how they perform, how the great players raise their level of play. Every time there's a challenge going on or a competition which raises their level, these guys are there to meet it. And that's the difference of teams which win and teams which sometimes take a step back. I mean, when they're challenged, the great players, they answer the challenge. They have the ability to raise their game. They have the ability to play when they're not 100%. And the management group around these players has to be strong. It has to be strong enough to know that if we have to make a trade, boom, how's it going to affect the chemistry of the team? Is it going to make us better? Or are we going to, soften our group? So there's so much that goes in to the psychological part of a team that you don't even think about. And even how players respond to each other. There's jealousies, there's problems of some players upset because he's not on the power play and so-and-so's on the power play, and who goes out first and who's playing first line. So it's a constant juggling act. And I have to say, working with Scotty Bowman, both in Buffalo and then again in Detroit, was a fantastic opportunity because this guy's a genius. I mean, he's going to go down as probably the greatest coach of the NHL. He'd coached in all kinds of eras from the 70s, 80s, 90s, up into 2002. And Scotty had the ability to read players. He had the ability to know who was going to be able to perform when he put him in different situations. And he had the ability to just, if there was a problem, he either solve it or he would just either eradicate it and try to make sure that we had a team that was all on the same page. And as a coach working with Scotty, I mean, he challenged you. He was a mentor for me, as I said. He was a person who I think I learned the most from, to try to be, find new methodology, find new ways to win, try to find something which is going to be a little bit different that the opposition hasn't seen. And play, penalty kill, whatever we could find, we had some nuance to it. Let's try it. So he was always trying to bring something in, even from football, from basketball, whatever it was. And I really took that to heart, and I've used it ever since. So that what I learned way back in Elmira, which was the off ice and the preparation and the Tarasoff type things, I added to Scotty Bowman's mentality of always being innovative and don't be afraid to try things. And to this day, I'm still trying to improve what I teach on the ice with different teams. So that to me was the best university, best college, or best, how would I say, learning experience you could possibly be in. And I've tried to share that with different coaches. Even when I go back to see our players, the ones from the 76 through 81 teams, I try to share some experiences with these guys just to let them know that, they're all part of it. I feel that I want to share it with these guys because they shared things with me. So I'm speaking quite quickly here. Let me take a look at our time. But I just want to finish with what I feel Elmira College has to offer. So after having a chance to go back on campus and see you, Dr. Lindsay, I thought of different things, the benefits of a smaller college, which at the time when I was there, I didn't realize because I'd only gone to small colleges. I went to ECAC College, and of course I went to Elmira. So I think the benefits that you have it's just a great opportunity to connect with the classmates, faculty, and staff in a real hands-on situation. I look at university now at the College of Elmira, and I'm thinking to myself, there's so much you can do there to help students instead of going to some large university where you're sitting, you're sitting in front of 5,000, students from the same group, or 1,000 students with the DA teaching you. I think Elmira College has all kinds of things to offer, and the relationships, you can build them faster. There's more fluidity. There's more contact. It's a constant personal contact that you have in small structured classes. So I just think even the environment that you have on campus with the community possibilities are tremendous. So, having said all this, I would like to go back and help you in any way I can, because I think the dynamics you have in yourself with the leadership group you have, I think Elmira College can be a very transformable college.
Well, Barry, thanks very much for those comments. That's wonderful for you to say. I would agree that it's something, the opportunities at Elmira College are unique in that students really matter. And when they figure out that they matter, it's an environment that they can really thrive in. So don't worry, I will make good on your offer. So
okay. And I know I went through this pretty quickly, but I knew I had 30 minutes, I thought, so I just wanted to be sure I covered the points. But I will mention a couple of things if you don't mind, all right, which had some fun to them. Going to St. Petersburg, Russia in 2007 was a tremendous, how would I say, shock learning experience, because I've been to Russia only once before, and that was with that course I took. And I came in to replace the Russian national team captain, Boris Mikhailov, number 13. And he was an ornery quality. So I came in and I was like the fairy godfather coming in because I was a nice person and I treated the guys well. So I got some good response immediately. And some of the different culture situations I thought I wanted to build on. One was you shake hands every single time you walk into the locker room, every single person shook hands. Okay, so that was nice to see. There was a contact. Number two, when you became friends with men or had some respect, they actually kissed each other on the cheek. And I tried that a few times, missed a few and hit guys on the lips, but the culture was you didn't have to be afraid to embrace another person. So that was when you became friendly, that was, you're right there, you had to kiss the guy in the cheek and hopefully hug each other and have that tight knit. And learning the people in Russia, I thought was a great cultural experience. The people who work every single day who don't have much, they would share their home, share their dinner plates with me when I came in, get the best china out. And then the oligarchs that I had to work for, they would drive around the city and park their cars. Any differences there was tremendous, but the hockey was good. And that was a good experience going from there. And then when I went into Chicago Blackhawks thereafter, with Chicago, I had a different role. I was teaching and trying to develop young players. So I became a coach, not for a team, but a coach for individuals. And that was a new learning experience that, was an environment which was super because the Blackhawks won 2 cups when I was there and they became, the talk of Chicago. So that was a great experience as well. And now I'm working with amateur teams, college teams, junior teams, and I'm giving back to hockey as well as learning at the same time. So it's been a good ride, a real good ride.
Great. Well, thank you, Barry. We did have a few questions come in. Just a reminder to the folks joining us, if you want to ask some questions for Barry, you can pop those in the Q&A at the bottom and we'll get to those. But Barry, we have a few from some of your friends. I have a feeling they're quite familiar with you. Coach, good evening and thanks for your time tonight. How has the conditioning and training evolved over the years from Elmira to the NHL players? What are your focus points now?
No, good question. I would say to you what we did back in Elmira, which was the off-ice training methodology. We didn't have machines. We didn't have treadmills. We didn't have heart monitors, and everything today is so technology driven that it's almost changed the environment to become a laboratory instead of just a workout off-ice place. So that's what has changed too. A lot of players have individual coaches now, which they never did previously. We have more people involved with the mental part of the game. They call them mental, coaches or mind coaches. And that was not a part of the game in the 90s as well, or 2000s. So it's really changed to high technology, more scientific. And is it making better players? Yes, individually, but I'd say to you, it hasn't changed the passion and it hasn't changed the hockey IQ or hockey intelligence.
Great. And this one comes from Phil Ware. He wants to know who ran the better practices, you or Scotty?
Would you say it again, please?
Yeah,
Sydney?
this one comes from your friend Phil Ware.
Yep.
Who ran the better practices, you or Scotty?
No, that's a good one. Well, Ace, I would say to you that the good thing about working with Scotty, he didn't care about practices so much, so we had a chance to go out and do it ourselves. And when Scotty did go on the ice, it was a little bit chaotic, and sometimes there was a lot of whistles and all kinds of different things going on. So the players would sort of ask to make sure Scotty wouldn't go on too much. But he loved the games. He was the best bench coach ever. But Ace, no, he was not a practice coach.
Okay, thank you. Another one. What were some of your team building exercises with the team to bring them together?
Well, I think what happened to us in when I started those workouts pre-season, we had all kinds of things going on. We had, exercises, we had strength exercises, we did aerobic exercises, we had elastic bands, we had heavy sticks. We did a lot of things that were sort of new, and I just tried out. Actually, Elmira College became a laboratory for me because I could do anything I wanted there and try things, and the guys were great about it. So I would say to you, what we did at Elmira College was really good. And because the guys were all in, we had a really strong team, not just because of skill set, but I would say to you mentally and team attitude was really strong. So for that, I'm always thankful to those guys.
Great. As a leader, how do you help negative team members overcome negativity despite great talent? How do you help motivate them and help them get out of their own way mentally, so to say?
Well, realistically, on every team, you have what they call positive, negative players. And positive, negative players mean their performance determines what their mentality is. If they have a great performance, they're high. If they have a poor performance, they're low. If they're playing with the wrong guys and are upset, they're very negative. If they're not on the power play, they can be very negative. So Bob Johnson helped me with that, saying that the players that we have to work with the most are the plus minus guys. They're the ones that you have to hold their hand. And if you take them off something, you got to make sure you explain to them. And the guys who just love to play, you don't have to stroke them as much because they'll go out and play for any coach. They just love the game. So I learned early on that you have to be careful with those guys who have a little bit more ego, a little bit more self-image, that you have to try to stay on top of them. And if you take them off a situation that they thought they should be on, you better clarify it for them or hope you give them a chance to get back on, because they can take a team south.
Okay, best team captain and or leaders you have worked with and why?
I would say Mario Lemieux, first of all, in Pittsburgh. He was a very quiet captain, didn't get up and have a rah-rah speech, but he was playing games at a high level. He couldn't even tie his skates because of a bad back. So his performance was such a high level that it was always in the right spot at the right time, that when it was needed, he would step up and make the right play or be the difference maker. Steve Yzerman, I would say in Detroit, was a different type of leader. He's the one who did it every day in practice. He would practice harder than the rest of them, either on or off the ice. He would do whatever needed. He'd block shots. He'd do penalty kill. He'd do power play. He was a guy that never cut a corner and expected the same from all the rest of the teammates. So to be on Steve Yzerman's side, you better be able to play both sides of the puck and you better play the right way. Otherwise, you weren't on his team. Then as we went on, we had different other captains came in. Chelios was a captain in Chicago, helped us in Detroit. Shanahan, he had come in from St. Louis. We had, as I said, Fetisov. We had all different types of captains, and Nick Lidstrom was probably a quiet captain. Never said a word, but his play was, he was the best defenseman in the league. He just did his job and wanted to go out and do it every day. So a lot of different personalities and a lot of different type of leadership groups you have.
Sorry, I was on mute because of my dogs. You coach
Go
the
ahead.
who's who of great players. Tell us about Jaeger, please.
Jaromir Jagr was, I had him in Pittsburgh. He came in as an 18-year-old, came in from Czech with his mom in a suitcase and skates, and couldn't speak English when he arrived. And my job with Bob Johnson was to be the last guy off the ice in every practice to make sure that I would stay on with any player who stayed on. So with Jaromir Jagr, he was a young player. Language was a problem for him. So we'd go on the ice and he'd stay after practice, sometimes 45 minutes after the rest of the guys were gone. And I couldn't figure out, you know, I'd stay on with him, do these different drills, try to explain or talk in the best way we could. He'd want the puck here, puck there, do this, do that. And I realized the reason why I stayed on the ice so long with Jagr was he didn't want to go in the locker room because he couldn't understand English. So he'd wait till the guys were all done and then he'd go shower up. So that's how he started, as a very, very shy individual. And he learned quite early on in his game of what he could do well. And that was coming off the boards, coming off the corners. He had great hands, very strong legs. And he just grew every single year. He grew every year that I was in Pittsburgh, become a better player, stronger player. And the city loved him, obviously. And he just loved the game. He'd go on the ice and never come off. In fact, to this day, he's still playing Czech. I think he's 50 some years old. He's still playing.
Thank you. The Red Wings have had their training camp in Traverse City for over 20 years. What are your memories of the camp? The prospect camp had 8 teams. How has that changed scouting?
Is this somebody from Detroit? I'd say to you, Traverse City was a fantastic experience. It was a great getaway to start our training camp. You had golf courses, you had fishing, you had guys going on balloon rides. So we had a lot of things happening around the rink. Every practice had a full house. So of course you'd go out and do it at a high level, having, you know, a crowd watching practice. And then the camp that you mentioned, which was the prospect camp, I think started out with 4 teams, went to 6 teams, went to 8 teams. So I think the highest we ever had was 8 different organizations there. You had two divisions, 4 in each division, and a playoff. And it was a really high level training camp for the young players. And now it's gone down to less teams because of COVID. Teams did not go participate. So I'm not quite sure how many teams are there now.
Okay, Coach Bruce, from the class of 81 here, what were your observations on the differences between the European players and the North American players?
Just to give you a very simple answer for that, if I was to go into a North American practice and put a bucket of pucks on the ice and just guys go play, and I just turn my back and grab a cup of coffee and not watch, but in North America, I'd hear pucks just pounding off the boards, guys taking slap shots, just banging pucks everywhere. If I did that same thing in Europe, I'd drop a bucket of pucks on the ice, turn my back, grab a cup of coffee, I would hear guys stick handling, trying different moves, trying to be more artistic, trying things. So the mentality was North America, let's bang it, let's hit it hard, let's drive it. In Europe, it's let's play with it, let's do something very artistic, much like their soccer. Different ways to approach the game.
Okay. Has your leadership style and personal values changed over the years as you gained more experience with different teams and different cultures?
Yeah, I would say to you that I had to learn early on how to work with professional players because they're different than college players. No matter what you say, their mentality is different, their drive is different, they have to feed their families, it's a job, it's an existence. And you better have a good rationale when you talk to you better have your ducks in order when you talk to a pro player. You can't just bullshit them. You can't just try to say something which isn't right, and you have to be direct. And sometimes you have to come back again at it with a different direction. So the pro player is different than the amateur player. I mean, they're playing for their life. They're playing for their you're only in the league so long, you only make so much, and you better, do what you can because you're setting yourself up for the future as well. Their expectations are higher of you. You have to treat them differently. I have a 1-year deal and he has a 10-year deal. I think he's got more power than I have. So how do you approach it?
Okay, well, I think I have the perfect question to finish this evening off with, and it's from Phil Ware. It says, who was the better defenseman, PK or Biz?
You can't win with that one. You can't win. So yeah, you can't win. But as I said earlier in my talk, the transitional players that came in, which was, Pat Kennedy, Ron Bismanoff, and Dave Smith, they were the difference makers of helping our team have leadership because we had, I would say, maybe 16 freshmen play. And that freshman group, they really got strong and grew fast. And for them, I would say to you, as I said, they were as good as any Stanley Cup team I had, is how they performed and how tight they were together, and what a tremendous experience that was.
Great. Well, with that, Barry, I want to thank you so much for your time. We are very fortunate to have this time with you to learn from your experiences, and we appreciate the question and answer session at the end. I learned a lot, I know. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Jen Swain for running the back end of this. And I hope everyone has a great night. If you have questions after this, feel free to send them to alumni@elmira.edu and we will get those questions to Barry for follow-up. Thank you, Barry.
Yeah, yeah, and good luck to the women's hockey team. I think they're still in the playoffs, are they not?
Yes, they are. They have a game on Saturday. They'll be doing their championship. So we are all very
And once
excited.
Yeah, right. And once again, thank you again for having the chance to participate. I know I rambled on quite quickly, but I was trying to stay within the time limit, so I'll cover again more later, anytime for questions, but thank you again.
Thank you, Barry. Have a great night, guys.